Hey guys, welcome to the Storm Shelter. I'm going over testimonies for others and helping others actually give their testimonies and bring it to those that are trying to share their story. So stick around and listen. Thank you. All right, guys, today we're with our sister Crystal, and she's going to give her testimony, her life, the way God's touched her, everything today. So I hope you guys are ready to hear from it, hear from her. I look forward to it as well. Go ahead, it's all you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Crystal. Um, a little bit about myself. um, Grew up with a single mom. My father was in my life up until they got divorced. I was young. I think they got divorced when I was like 6 or 7. And from that point on, my mother raised 4 kids by herself. We grew up in the church up until my father left. And once my father left, like she just started going full speed ahead, working and everything. So there was that. School, I was bullied a lot in school, which brought up a lot of rejection. And I remember watching a lot of sermons regarding rejection, and God showed me like that was where everything started in school, being rejected. And when my father left, that was a big part of it. I felt rejected. Um, so I was really kind of rebellious as a child, but I didn't really get rebellious until I reached my teen years. Um, and that was simply because my mom, she was working a lot, trying to raise 4 kids by herself. My dad was not around. He had left at that point in time. Not sure if he moved out of state or not, but we did not see him a lot after he left. Um, when I was younger, I was about 5 or 6. My mom, it was hard raising 4 kids by herself. So a lot of times we'll be at our grandma's house, or I remember one point in time, for some reason, I was staying with an aunt, and my cousin, she had 3 boys. I remember I was molested by all 3 of my cousins at one point in time. Um, my aunt had walked in on it, and she was upset, of course. At a time, I felt like she was more upset with me than at them. And then she sent me back home to my mom. We never really talked about it. I'm not sure if she even told her what happened. And I never really thought about it. I have this thing where everything negative that has happened in my life, I will completely push it out of my mind. So there is that. Mm, I grew up in my childhood home. It was a good neighborhood. I loved my home and everything else. But once my mom, she lost the house when I was about 15, 16. She lost the house. We had to move. We moved into like a worse neighborhood than what we were used to. I grew up kind of sheltered. So once we moved, it was like all hell broke loose. um, I was skipping school a lot, but at this time I was in high school. I remember getting kicked out of the first high school that I was in, and she pulled some strings to get me into like a really good high school. So at that point, my grades were good, but my behavior was not so good. Like I said, I was skipping a lot. I was never into boys my own age, so I was always into older men. I remember getting into cars with older men, having older men drop me off at school. I was not having sex at that age, but I enjoyed the attention because these were dudes in their 20s. So all I would hear is, "Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, you're so beautiful," and everything that I was not hearing, like everything I was insecure about and that I was being teased about in school because I've always looked older, in my opinion. I never looked like a child. So, and I was always heavy set. So everything that I wanted to hear, they were saying to me.
Yeah, they were feeding you everything that, like, just feeding that demon there a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, I
I
understand
started
that.
feeling special. I was like, oh, okay, I'm pretty, I'm this, I'm that. So eventually, as I was skipping school, eventually I met my first child father, who was way older than me. He was, he told me he was 29. He knew how old I was. Like, I remember meeting him on my way home from school. And no, it wasn't on my way home from school. I was walking my dog. I used to walk my dog a lot. I was the main one responsible for it. um, so I was walking my dog when I met him. He pulled me to the side or whatever. I remember he was sitting on his porch. He was like, "Hey, man, you're beautiful." And once again, feeding my flesh, like, "Hey, you're beautiful. You're this, you're that." And he asked me how old I was. I told him at this point I was 16. Yes, I was 16. So I told him I was 16. Mind you, we just moved into a new neighborhood. No one knew me or anything like that. No one really knew my mom. So there was no one to be like, "Hey, your kid's doing this or your kid's doing that." Whereas the other neighborhood, we had neighbors that probably would have stopped it in its tracks. Um, but no one knew me. He comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, you're beautiful," and he asked my age. I told him I was 16. Um, he told me he was 29, when in reality he was 31. Why he lied, to this day I don't know because he was still older. So at that point in time, we just began talking daily. Like, I would find random reasons just to go walk my dog because that was my way of going to see him. Um, Eventually, I started getting back into church myself. Even at that age, I felt God was calling me, like, "No, this isn't right. Like, you need to come back to me." Like, so I started going to church by myself. My mother at this time, I think she was a Jehovah's Witness. Um, but she never took us to service or anything, for whatever reason. But I remember starting to go to church by myself. Um, and one particular time that I went, I remember it was an altar call and the pastor was like preaching, and he went to say, if anyone wants to give your life back to Christ, now's the time. And I remember him walking down the alleyway. Now I'm about to cry.
It's
um,
all right. Take your time.
he's walking. He was walking down the alleyway, and he looks at me like right in my face, like just looks at me, and it was like he was talking to me, and it was like there was this light shining over him, and while he was talking to me, he's like, "If you want to give your life over," and I'm like, I was like, God telling me, like, "Yeah, get up, it's time, it's time." So I remember getting up, going to the altar, and yeah, I gave my life to Christ at that time, at that moment. And I was baptized a little bit later. Um, I remember, and It's like right after I gave my life back over to Christ and everything, right after I was baptized, that's when the enemy started hitting me hard, left and right. My contact with the older guy like became more and more. As a matter of fact, I wasn't sexually active at that time, but I remember doing things with him. Like right after I would leave from church, I'm going to go see him. I'm going to go visit him and everything like that. To the point eventually my mom started getting suspicious. Eventually, and mind you, I'm still 16. So this all happened within like a year. So my mom started getting suspicious. She would ask me, and I remember we got into this big argument, and she hit me, like actually closed fist hit me, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, you don't. I felt like she didn't love me, she didn't want me. So once again, rejection. She accused me of having sex. I was not having sex at that time. So after that happened, I just felt upset, and I'm like, no one wants me here. I shouldn't be here. Like, why am I here? Like, I felt I was grown at that point. Like, I'm with an older man, you know, why do I need to be here? He's got his own place. I can go live with him. All of these thoughts just started happening in my head. So I'm like, the next day I went to go see him. And he's like, why don't you just come and live with me? Like, you can live with me. So I'm like, okay. That night, I packed up my stuff in the middle of the night while everyone was asleep. I had everything planned out, plotted out, packed my bags, and I left. And I went to go live with him. Um, when I moved with him, everything was not peaches and cream like I thought it would be. I realized he was living in a house that was not up to code and was like kind of abandoned. Lights and everything was still on and working, but it was not in the best condition. And
Right.
and so, but me, I'm like, I'm grown, I can handle it. At this point, I'm like, I can't go back home anyways. I I felt kind of trapped at the moment because I was like, I can't go back home if I wanted to, because I've made my decision, I made my choice, I ran away from home, and I was scared to go back home. So, he was living with his father as well. So his father took one look at me. He's like, how old is she? He lied and told his father that I was 18. And his dad eventually figured out, like, oh no, she's not 18. He came to me and he's like, how old are you really? So came out, I was 16. He was pissed. He's like, you brought this child to my home, like, and you knew how old she was. No, he was against it, like completely against it. But it was like he was against it, but he had no control over the situation.
Right.
So, I didn't really get along with his father at first because his father was always like, no, this isn't right. This isn't right. And he would like constantly talk mess or tease me about the situation. His whole family was against it because, of course, they all found out how old I was. And shortly after I moved in with him, we ended up moving out of that house. Like, we lost the house. I can't even remember. It became foreclosed. They shut the house down, and we ended up leaving that house. And we were homeless for a good portion of our time together. We were homeless, bouncing from his family's house to another family's house to another family's house. We were never stable. So at that point, I felt like that was my signal to no, like, this isn't right. But like I said, at this point, I was stuck. And then Eventually, we became stable again. We found an apartment, moved into the apartment building. I had began drinking too at the age of 16 once I got with him. So most of it was like one big drunken haze. Like that's how he kept me. What's the word for it?
Like
I was like
compliant?
under his spell. Yeah, compliant. That was how he kept me compliant. He got me to drinking. So I was drinking heavy, like the hard stuff. It wasn't good liquor. It was, I don't know if anyone knows of Mad Dog 2020.
Oh yeah, I grew up with that. I know exactly what that is.
Yeah. So I was drinking the hard stuff, and it was like I started becoming so depressed with everything and the situation, and it's like the enemy was just hitting me hard. Like I didn't even realize it. I was drinking, and I would drink to the point of making myself sick. Like I'm throwing up everywhere and everything, but I would still wake up the next day and want to drink again. At this point, I was not smoking weed or anything, but I was just drinking. I tried to smoke, but I couldn't. I didn't like the feeling of it at that point. So we had moved into the apartment building. I became friends with a bunch of people that were just as lost as I was. But to me, in that young age, it was fun to me. Like everything, all the wickedness we were doing, the drinking, the staying up all night, the just, it was fun to me. Um, so I got lost, really lost in that. Um, and I think that the whole apartment building was like just demonized because there was so many things that were happening in that building. And there was a lot of like drug addicts that lived there. And I remember one point in time, I actually was seeing shadows, shadow figures and everything like that. I was seeing them with my own eyes. It freaked me out, but I would brush it off as, oh yeah, I'm just drunk. It's fine. Um, but um, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little lost in my story.
You're all right. You're all right.
um, but that building was just wicked. Everything about it was wicked. Eventually, I got pregnant with my son at 16, had him at seven. No, I was 17 when I got pregnant, when I found out I was pregnant. Um, I remember going to the doctor, and at this point, I'm still not in contact with my family. I ran away from home. I broke all contact. I did not try to reach out or anything. And I remember going to the nurse's office and to the doctors and the nurses asking me questions. And she's like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 17. She asked how old he was. He told her. At this point, she's like, oh no. Like, but even then, she didn't do anything about it. I don't know if she couldn't or what was going on. At this point, I dropped out of school. I was just living free. But she asked, like, are you still in touch with your parents? I'm like, no, I'm no longer in touch with anyone. So she really had no one to call. um, she asked how old he was. I told her rather, how old he was. She looked concerned, but I looked at her and I'm like, I am 17, I'm grown. She goes, oh, okay, yeah, you grown. It just started laughing like, you're still a child.
Right, right.
And I was still a child, but at that point, I felt like an adult because I was putting myself in adult situations. I'm playing house with this grown man, and now I'm about to have this grown man's child. So yeah, when I had my son Christopher, it was not the best experience. When I had him, I was alone. I still was not in touch with my mom. My mom did not find out that I even had a child until my son was 3 months old because I was scared. I was ashamed. I was not in a good place, let alone she didn't know that I went and ran away with a grown man who was in his 30s. So there was that. When I had my son, no one was in the room with me because they wouldn't let him in the room with me. I'm not sure if it was because of the age difference. I don't know, but they tricked him. They're like, "Oh yeah, she's about to go into labor. You can just go around here and go get suited up, and we're going to take her back into the room." And so I had my child by myself, completely by myself. They even asked me, like, "Where's your mom? Like, where's your mom? Like, do you have her number?" And I did try to call her, but I think her number had changed. She got a new number and everything, so it was like I couldn't reach her if I tried. So I had my son. After I had my son, me and his father just started getting into it more. Like, it was so much strife and arguments and everything else, and he was so possessive. I could not glance at a man like without him saying, "Oh, you want him, you want to be with him, this, that, and the other." Like, he was really possessive. He became mentally abusive. He was drunk a lot. Like, a whole nother side of him came out after I had my son. And I'm not sure if that side was always there and I was just drunk all the time and never really saw it, but he started showing his true self. He was mentally abusive. He didn't want me making any friends. He was all I had at one point in time. Or the friends that I would make, it would be because he introduced me to them. And then I started finding out that he was sleeping with most of them that he introduced me to. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And then he was the type of person, he would move a bunch of strangers in. You know, he was really money hungry, so he would move people in, didn't really check their backgrounds or anything. He just didn't care much. As long as you're paying him some type of rent money, it's fine. You know, so every month or so, it was somebody new coming in. And if I were to say something, me and him would argue about it. So I just stopped talking about it. Up until I found out that he was sleeping with these people. Then I found my voice again. And then me and him would start arguing more. Physical altercations started happening. I remember one time we got into it so bad, and this was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, we got into it so bad one time. Like, we were physically fighting, and then I like threw him through a glass table. Like, I don't know where I found the strength from, but I just, he called the police on me. Police came and they looked at him and laughed. Like, and then, "How old is this girl?" And I gave them my age and everything. They laughed, they left. They didn't take him to jail, didn't take me to jail. That was just that. And then after that happened, me and him broke up. I wound up going to go stay with my mom. I got back in touch with her and reunited with her. And yeah, I stayed with her for a good moment of time. And then my mom, after she had divorced my dad, she had her own issues. We had different uncles, so to speak, that would come and go. And she met this one man who she eventually married. He was an alcoholic. And he used to be mentally abusive to me and my other siblings. Like, he'll get drunk. It would only be when he was drunk. When he was sober, he was fine. When he drank, it was like he became a whole nother person. So he was mentally abusive. He used to drink and then threaten us and everything. And at this point, my mom would be at work. I would be at home with my siblings and everything. And it was just a bad atmosphere to the point where I eventually left, went back with the older man again. But this time when I went back, it was different. Me and him still were arguing. He was still possessive. He was still cheating. So I decided, hey, I'm about to cheat back. And after that, I just became really promiscuous, very promiscuous. Like, I was sleeping with this person, that person, not caring who the person was or anything like that. So, um, and then after that, eventually me and him broke up again. I got into another relationship that was not great with someone that I thought, okay, he's calling me pretty and everything. That was my thing. As long as you just tell me I'm pretty and everything like that, I'm good. Like, it didn't matter what you had going in your life, because the men that I was with were not good for me at all. And I noticed even through those times, it was God trying to like tell me like, hey, this person isn't for you. This person isn't for you. I'm showing you. Look. But I was still like operating out of my flesh. So it was like, I don't see anything. Like, it was like I closed my ear to God in so many ways. And I was just doing my own thing, sleeping with this person, sleeping with that person, trying to make myself feel better about things. And I became really angry, really depressed. Eventually, I did put myself back to school. I got my GED and everything. But even then, I was depressed. I was angry. And while I was in the program to get my GED, I remember one counselor, her name was Miss Sharonda, who I think I lost contact with her. She was like my guardian angel. I remember she would just talk to me like all the time about what's going on in your life. I remember I felt like, and at this point in time, I began using marijuana. Nonstop, just every day, every second of the day. It wasn't as bad as it got to be at that point in time, but I was still using. So much so that it was a requirement for the program that we had to drop, and we had to drop clean. If we dropped dirty, then we wouldn't, because we were getting paid for the program too. It was like a GED / we're learning construction skills.
Okay. That sounds really
yeah,
neat.
So it was. I enjoyed my time there at the program. But in order to get certain bonuses, because every so often, I think every 3 months or whatever, we would get a bonus. But the conditions were, we had to take a drug test and we had to drop clean for that said drug test. I remember dropping for the drug. I didn't even take it seriously. It was like, oh, whatever. But after I took the test, she pulled me in the office and she's like, you've got the highest number in your class. For some reason, that made me proud. Not even sure why, but I was proud up until she's like, this is a problem. Like, what's going on in your life? Like, what are you going through? So I ended up telling her everything I was going through. I told her I was depressed and everything. At this point, I was cutting myself with anything I could find, just cutting, like, and it wouldn't even be to try and kill myself. I didn't want to kill myself. It would just be to feel something other than the anger, the sadness, the depression that I was going through. Cutting made me feel better. So I would tell her, and I showed her my scars and everything, and she just felt so sad for me and everything. And she changed it to where we were supposed to see her like once a week. She started seeing me every day. In so many ways, she like saved my life. So she got me in touch with another therapist. And I started going to see the other therapist. They gave me more coping skills to deal with depression and everything else. Like I was taking yoga, didn't realize how bad yoga was at the time. I'm thinking it was relaxing and everything else. Didn't realize I was praying to other gods, because now that I know, it's like, oh, this is how they want us to cope with things.
Right.
But at that moment,
a lot of people just look at it like it's just stretching, and it's like it's so much more than that.
yes,
So
exactly. Like it's a lot more. Like, but I didn't think anything of it. So at the time, it helped. But at the same time, after I was finished with the yoga classes or whatever, I would still feel the same way.
Right.
It helped, but it didn't help. And then the therapist told me to put a rubber band around my wrist and just pop the rubber band every time I would feel these feelings. Eventually, none of that helped, and I went back to cutting. No, my dog just popped over here. I'm sorry. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong?"
Yeah, animals
So
are really good at that.
yeah. So after the yoga program, after therapy sessions, everything went back to the way it was. I was never really happy in my life. Me and my son's father, we started going back to church and everything, and even that didn't feel right. Like nothing with him felt right. And mind you, at this point, I was like between two guys. It's my son's father, and then there was another guy that I was messing with. But he had a whole girlfriend and couldn't fully be together, and my life was a mess then. A whole mess. So even like the preacher like false prophesied. And I learned something else. You can't let everyone prophesy over you. There's a lot of false preachers out here that would try to do that. And I never felt like the spirit moved through that church. But I still attended thinking, hey, maybe it's just me. But he prophesied that me and him would get married. We would have 3 kids and everything else. That never happened. We had that with my one son, and then after that, me and him eventually broke up for good. After all the cheating between the two of us, we fell out. My sister had came to stay with us, and them two started getting into it. And one thing about me, you're not gonna mess with my family. You don't mess with my sisters, especially. So that was like the thing that made me completely leave him alone. What else? So eventually I started a full-blown relationship with the other guy. The other guy was no good. Me and him were together for 11 years, off and on. We cheated on each other. I'd moved into another apartment building thanks to the GED and construction program that I was in. they moved me out of that building. I moved into another apartment building. But then, like, me being myself and leaving that relationship and kind of being in another relationship, but not really, because once again, he was seeing someone else. Like, he eventually had a child by her and everything else. So it was like we weren't really fully together. So once again, I started feeling rejected. But I still messed with him regardless because he made me feel good. Um, but I still became promiscuous. Like, I was still sleeping with this person, that person. It was bad. And my son at this time, I sent him to go live with his grandfather because me and his father's father began getting along, and he was like, he talked to me, like, we had a whole sit down. He's like, it's not that I never liked you, it's just that I know how my son is, and I know that he was wrong for getting involved with you at that age. So me and him, we eventually developed a better connection. So I let my son go stay with him for a while, and I was living by myself. And while I was living by myself, I was really promiscuous. I was sleeping with this person, that person, or the other. I was partying. I started smoking way more weed, way more. Like, I would smoke, I'll say like 3 blunts a day by myself, which was terrible. But that was my way to escape reality. Eventually, I became financially irresponsible to the point where I wasn't paying rent. Most of my money is going on drugs. Most of my money is just going on drinking, smoking, partying, whatever. And eventually, I lost that place. Had to go back, still my mom. I stopped smoking for a while. Yeah. Eventually, I moved back into that very same apartment building where I was staying with my son's father, but I had my own apartment. So, began hanging out with people I had no business hanging out with. Still drinking, still smoking, still being promiscuous. It was like God felt so far away from me, but he was still keeping me. Like, he still watched over me, because some of the things I went through, I know he protected me from. That building eventually caught on fire, a bad fire. And I remember a friend of mine, she died from that fire because she fell from a window trying to, like, hang on. Like, it was so bad that she, like, climbed out the window to try and get some air. But she tried to hang on. The firefighters were there, and they were trying to put out the fire and get to her, but she slipped and she fell and she died. That situation, it kind of changed me, but not really. I was still doing the same things. But I feel like even then God protected me, because I could have burnt up in that fire. It was that bad. Like, the fire was on the floor that I was at, that I was living on. But, like, I got out and I was okay. From there, I'm trying to think. From there, I went back to my mom's a lot. My mom had a lot of grace with me, a lot, because so many times she could have just been like, "No, I'm done with you," because I wasn't right. I knew I wasn't right. And even when I stayed with her, I was still doing wrong. But she had a lot of grace with me. Um, Eventually, I moved by myself again. I started working at this one job, and I started hanging out with this one lady that was a Christian, but she was a Christian that still smoked. She still drank and everything. So I'm like, hey, she's a good person, and she's like, she still goes to church and maybe she'll be better to hang out with or whatever, but not really because she was doing all the things that she shouldn't have been doing. She was still drinking, smoking, cussing, um, a lot of things she shouldn't have been doing. And I would just hang out with her thinking, hey, I'm doing better, I can get back into church. She never took me to the church she was going to though, because she barely went. But I felt still, I'm like, I'm hanging out with someone that's into the Lord. She could talk to me about him or whatever. She could pray for me. Like I was relying on someone else, a person, a human being for my salvation. And another time God saved me. We were sitting outside of a park and we were smoking or whatever. I had my head down. There was a basketball game going on, like right there. And we were parked on the side of the street. And we were just talking, rolling up. We're about to smoke or whatever. And then I remember her saying, Crystal, get down. Crystal, get down. They about to shoot. All of a sudden I hear pop, 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 pop. Because they got into it on the basketball court over whatever. I don't even know what it was about, but I remember getting down because she pushed me down. Like she didn't just say get down, she pushed me down. And after the shooting stopped, I look up and there were a lot of people, like there was a couple people on the ground that have been shot. The bullets went through her car windshield. And she's like, I think I've been hit. I think I've been hit. And I'm looking at her. I'm checking her for if she got shot or whatever. She didn't get shot. It was just that the glass hit her. It fell on her because she was like covering me with her body as they were shooting. And I remember telling her, like, it's okay, it's okay. I'm like, I don't have my license at this time. I didn't drive or any of that. She's like, I think I've been hit. So I was calling her family and everything. I'm like, something happened. I remember checking her. She's like, she hadn't been hit. She wasn't bleeding from anywhere. She just got hit with glass. And then she was able to drive. We're both shaking, like, and then we, like, once we had got out the car, because we drove to one of her kids' homes, and they drove us to the hospital. But before they drove us, like, they were checking in the car and everything, and one of the bullet holes had came through the windshield. And had she not told me to duck when she did, because I wasn't paying attention, my head was down. I was not paying any attention. And had she not said anything, I would have been gone. Because the bullets came straight through my side of the windshield and it would have hit me right here. That was another time I believe God was just looking out, like covering me, like. So there was that. It's just all through my life, I know that he's been covering me. And I never really noticed it because I was so in the world and so into just myself.
When we look
That
back
I
on
never really.
our lives, we can see God's hand and where he was and how he was moving. We can't see forward, but when we look back, we can see exactly what he was doing, So it's one of those things. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Right. Because even after that happened, it was like, why didn't I change then? I was still, after that happened, I'm still doing the same things. still smoking, still drinking. But after that moment, I had this fear of going to parks. Like, I would not go to a park at all. Couldn't take my son to a park. It was like I was just scared that something was gonna pop off. Like, parks became bad to me in the area that I live in because I stay in Detroit. Everyone knows about Detroit. um, it's just a bad neighborhood, especially the place where we were parked at when where it happened. And I remember going to the hospital that day. At this time, I was with someone else. I had broken up with that one guy, and I started a relationship with someone that I was working with. And I remember um, going with the woman and her kids to the hospital, and there were so many people being rushed to the hospital from that one park because a lot of people had gotten hit. So God saved my life that day. So many days He saved my life. That was just one of the instances. So I had eventually left that job, moved somewhere else. I broke up with the person that I was with, and I was single, and I was still being promiscuous. I remember another time God had His hand over me, and it was crazy because I met this one guy. He was my weed dealer. He was always, he was handsome, he was attractive, he was everything. But I remember he took me to this abandoned house that he was like trapping out of. And this was our first time really being together, like alone. Other than that, we'll be riding around smoking and everything. But he took me to this one place, and we were listening to music, we were vibing or whatever, we were smoking, and he laced the blunt. Because he would roll, but it's like when he would roll, he would have his back turned to me, and I'm drinking and everything, and his back is towards me, and I'm like playing with him. I'm like, "What are you doing over there? You ain't trying to drug me or anything." He's like, "No, go back over there. I got you. I'm just rolling up." And me and my naivety, I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And I remember hitting the blunt that he rolled, and I would just feel lightheaded. It was a different type of high. And like, I felt my body was going numb and everything. And like, I figured, like, I'm like, yeah, he laced this with something. And then we had sex, but it was like I was out of my body. Like, I don't know. It was a different type of feeling, a different type of high. And I remember blacking out. I remember waking up, and he was there. We smoked again. Once again, the blunt had a funny taste to it. And I'm like, there's something in this blunt. But why was I still smoking? I have no idea. Um, Eventually he's like, I'm about to go somewhere, but I'll be right back. You stay here. You stay here. Because I was ready to go at this point. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. He's like, no, stay here. Stay here. It's cool. You could be by yourself, because at this time I had moved, but I was staying with my best friend and her mom. And like, I remember just wanting to get away. That's why he took me to the house or whatever. He's like, you can stay here. It's cool. You can stay here. You ain't got to go back home. I'm like, no, I'm ready to go home now. You can take me back home. He's like, no. Like, he would not take me back home. So I'm like, for whatever reason, I just became more compliant. I'm like, okay, whatever. Just hurry up and come back. So he left. And once he left, it was like I had this urge, like someone was telling me, leave. You need to leave now. Like, don't wait for him to come back and drive you home. And once again, I feel like that was The Holy Spirit telling me like, no, get up, go now. So I remember getting up, and then I look over to the table where he was sitting at, and he was rolled up, and I saw traces of white powder. And I'm like, this was crack. Like I was familiar with what crack was because I lived in a neighborhood where crack was prevalent. Like everyone smoked crack. Like there's a bunch of crackheads walking around. It was like zombie time. Um, but I remember looking, it was powder. I'm like, this man has been feeding me crack in the blunt, crack lace blunts. And I remember when I was smoking too, it was something else because the smoke smelled funny. And I knew what the smell of crack smelled like because once again, the building that me and my son's father had stayed in, everyone was smoking crack. So I knew what that smell was, and that smell made me nauseous. And it was like I remember feeling nauseous while smoking the blunt with him. But I never said anything. I was so compliant to everything he was saying. But I knew something was wrong with it. Um, so I look, I see what he was doing, and then when I went to leave, because I'm like, I'm about to leave. I'm leaving now. I go. There was no doorknob on the front door. There was no way for me to leave out of that house at all. Like I was trapped. I was stuck. Um, I don't know what he was trying to do with me. I don't know why he trapped me because he was so just adamant about, no, you can't leave. You have to stay here. You have to stay here. No, 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 no. I'm not taking you home yet. Just wait till I leave. I mean, wait till I come back and then I'll take you back home. But once he left, there was no way for me to get out. Absolutely none. I remember trying to shove the door, like kick the door. I remember the mailman was coming to deliver mail and I was trying to get their attention, but they couldn't hear me. I was just terrified. I was scared because I'm like, something told me like, if he comes back, it's not going to be good. Like something's going to happen. So somehow, I don't even remember how I got out. I think I found a butter knife or something and pried the door open. That was God once again. Once again, that was nothing but God, because I remember even like a month or so back, I remember God showing me all the instances that he saved me from. And that was one of the instances that he saved me from. But I got out. And luckily, the place where he had took me to wasn't too far from where my best friend and her mom was living at. So I could walk there with no problem. I walked back. And by this time, it was the next day. It was daylight. And no one was really concerned. Like, where were you at all night? Like, no one really asked me anything. I'm not sure why, but I made it out of that. So many instances where I made it out alive, and I don't know how. Because I know things could have got worse. I put myself in so many situations where things could have went bad for me, but by God's grace, I got out of them. Like, it was not me, it was God, especially that instant, especially with me about to get shot. You know, I could have been out of here so many times, so many. And so fast forward, you know, I'm still in the world, still drinking, still smoking, still doing crazy stuff, but I was more careful and cautious as to what was going on. Like, I didn't really put myself in those situations as often anymore. I would go and stay with my mom a lot more. Like, I was like done with staying by myself, because I feel like if I was by myself or even staying with friends, I would get myself into trouble a lot. So I feel like my mom was like my safe haven, staying with her. And at this point, she was single. She had broken up with a toxic man. So it was just me and her and my younger siblings, because she went on and had 3 more kids after, my brothers and sisters or whatever. So my
Right.
mom has 7 kids altogether. Um, so I went back home. I stayed out of trouble. I didn't smoke as much. I wasn't drinking as much. But eventually, I got tired of staying with my mom, because me naturally, I just didn't like rules. I didn't like the fact I couldn't do what I wanted. Throughout my life, I would be getting places, and I would just, once I moved into my own place, it was like, I want to drink more, I want to smoke more, I want to party more. And it was just, I turned back into that person, and I strayed further and further away from God every time I moved away. Um, so fast forward to the place where I'm staying now, I became severely depressed. Like, I lost a job back in March of 2023. So in this year, I lost a job, and then eventually, like, I just stopped wanting to work. I became really depressed. I would have little odd jobs here and there just to make enough money so that I can pay some rent and then support my habits. And of course, now at this point in time, I have 2 kids. I have my daughter. My daughter and my son are 8 years apart. I had my daughter by the guy that I was in and out of the relationship with. After I left my son's father, I started messing with him on and off for like 11 years. Eventually, I had my daughter, and now it's like, throughout that time, I found it hard to fully love my kids, to fully connect with my kids. My daughter was with my mom a lot of the time because of how I was. And this year, like, it just got worse. Like, and my daughter is so affectionate, so loving. Just in so many ways, my children have saved me. But I couldn't realize that because I'm still in the world. I'm still drinking, still smoking and everything. And earlier this year, like, it just got worse. Like, I went from smoking once or twice a day to like throughout the day, because I felt like it eased my mind, made me forget a lot of things. I've been single for a few years at this point in time, but still I felt like I needed love, but I didn't want to be in a relationship, because to me, relationships equal pain and suffering and everything else because of all the bad relationships that I got into. So it was just, I'm like, I might as well just be by myself, but I wasn't happy by myself. And I just became more depressed, started smoking more, drinking and everything. And I just was not happy at all. And I remember my mom and my sister called me all the time, and my younger sister that's right up under me. They would call me all the time, and they were like, "Hey, are you okay? I'm just checking on you." Eventually, I stopped answering phone calls. I isolated myself from my family, from friends, for weeks at a time. No one would hear from me. It would just be me laying in my bed watching TV or something like that. Was never really happy. But at that moment, I didn't feel like it was depression. I just didn't know. I couldn't pinpoint what was wrong with me. I'm like, something's wrong, but I don't know what. I would quit jobs left and right because I wasn't happy at the job. So eventually, like, I told my sister. I remember crying to my sister one time because she was like, "Are you okay?" And when she said, "Are you okay?" Because they didn't hear from me for like months. Like, I would just like isolate myself. And I'll be in my room. I didn't really connect with my children as much either. Like, knock on my bedroom door be shut because I would either be smoking or sleeping. That would be it. And I didn't want to be bothered at all, which makes me sad because I feel like my children feel really rejected because of that. And I'm pretty sure I've damaged them because of how I was. But I couldn't pinpoint it. And when my sister was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay." And I just remember crying and breaking down and crying and crying and crying, like uncontrollably. And then she's like, in so many ways, my sister saved me too. Because she came over every time she was hearing my voice, like, "No, I'm not okay." She would come over, or she'll call me more. She'll try and take my mind off of things. Or she'll be like, "Hey, I'm going to come get the kids and take them over mom's house or whatever, just so you can get a break." Or my mom would call and be like, "I want the grandbabies," just so, because they knew I was going through stuff. Um, I just couldn't pinpoint what was wrong with me. But I became so angry and so depressed, and in so many ways, I embraced my anger because in so many ways, I feel like it protected me from situations, especially when I became single. It was like, I don't need a man for anything. I'm single, I'll stay single. Men suck. Um, so I had to embrace my anger. It got to the point where they used to tease me about, my family teased me about it. Like, don't bother Crystal when she wakes up in the morning, before she's had her coffee. That's why I would blame it on not having coffee. Waking up in the morning just upset, stressed out, and everything. They'd be like, "Don't bother Crystal if she hasn't had her coffee." My nephew would be like they would know, like, "Don't bother me until I've had coffee." But eventually that like wore off because I just was angry throughout the day. It's not just coffee. It's not just when I smoke weed, because I called weed my happy gas. That was what made me happy. So I had begun smoking more because I'm like, this is what makes me happy. Like, I can focus more. It's like I started lying to myself, like, this stabilized me mentally. Like, it was a crutch. Never really like, and I still wasn't. I didn't go back to church or anything. Like, it was just me in my room, depressed. Jobs would come and go. I wouldn't want to do anything. It was bad. Like, and then I remember, like, I started getting into New Age, not quite getting into it, but I remember thinking, like, maybe if I get some crystals, like, I would be okay, because I started studying about what certain crystals meant. And I'm like, I was planning on, like, well, maybe I could just do this. I could just sell crystals or this or that. And I'm like, for some reason, God never let me accomplish what I wanted to do with the whole crystal thing. He was like, no, no, no. But I never really saw it as him saying no, no, no. It was just me thinking like, I'm just procrastinating about this stuff. I remember I got more into dark things. Like I remember like going through this rabbit hole on YouTube of just sidekicks and demons. Like I remember watching certain things on YouTube talking about people going into haunted houses and psychics doing readings and everything. And I got to one and it'd be like, oh, maybe I should start going to haunted houses and I can do YouTubes about that too. It was just bad. And that I think contributed to my depression because that's all that I would do is watch videos on hauntings and demons and voodoo and things of that nature. And I don't know, I'm happy that I figured out, well, I didn't figure out anything. I'm glad that throughout all of this, God didn't let me go. He always kept his hand on me throughout all of this. I remember in June of this year, like June, July, I remember saying, because I started figuring like I'm depressed, like I'm going through a depression. And so I remember thinking like, it's the weed, like I need to stop smoking. But when I said it, it was like I was relying on myself to stop. Like I can do it. I'll be fine. Like I can stop. I didn't really go to God and say, hey, I want to stop. Like, can you help me? Which is what I should have did. But I just thought that I could just stop cold turkey like that. That lasted about a week. And then I remember I was streaming too. I was streaming on this dating website. It was called Clover. So I was doing streaming on there, and I remember prior to me trying to stop, I remember what made me want to really stop was because not only the depression, but because while I was streaming, I remember people telling me like, dang, while you are like on the camera, you're smoking a lot. Like I'll be smoking joints back to back to back to back and listening to music and just participating in chaos and like it was just bad. And it got to the point where I could not stream or anything without being high. If I wasn't high or if I didn't have weed to smoke while I was on the stream, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. And then once people pointed out, like, hey, you smoke back to back, you smoke a lot of weed. I'm like, really? And then once again, I feel like, I'm proud of that. And it was like, I started debating like whether weed was of God because I started trying to turn back to God again. And I'm like, weed isn't bad. I'm sorry, I was getting a call. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I started getting the call.
Yeah, you're all right.
But I started thinking like weed's not bad. Weed is fine, you know? Like nothing in the Bible says that weed is bad. That's what I started thinking and telling myself to convince myself of that. Like he says drunkenness, not knowing drunkenness can mean high too. I'm thinking it's just liquor. Like, so I'm like, let me stop drinking liquor. That could be why I'm so depressed too. So I stopped drinking liquor and then try to convince myself weed is fine. God, And that's sinful of me to think. But God made weed too. Like, it grows from the ground. It's part of nature. That was how I convinced myself that it was fine. But deep in my heart, I knew it wasn't fine, because I would be on YouTube and then Christian videos will pop up out of nowhere, and I'll be like, or like even the little Christian ads, like the Pure Flicks and all that other stuff about Christian movies, and I'll automatically just feel like, oh no, like it would freak me out, and I would like hurry up, click off of them. But I felt like that was God saying, no, you need to watch this. Eventually, I came across Pastor Richard Lorenzo Jr.'s videos, and I watched it. It was a deliverance video, as a matter of fact. And I watched it, and I just remember thinking, wow, like, this is my chance. Like, I really need to stop doing this stuff and give my life over to God. Like, so I watched it. I did like a self-deliverance at home, and I felt so much peace and everything. And I felt so good. And I felt demons come out of me. Like, I was choking, I was spitting up, I was shaking. And after the video or whatever, I just remember feeling so much better. And I remember, like, I signed up for the discipleship course. But after I signed up, I never really started it. Like, I watched 2 videos, and then it's like I stopped for whatever reason. Felt like that was the enemy trying to be like, no, you can't do that. And then I just feel like I was still streaming on the dating app, and like this was around the time I stopped smoking or whatever. But once again, I never really came to God and like broke down and was like, hey, I want to stop. Help me to stop. I just feel like I tried it myself. I tried it in my flesh. And I was still streaming on the dating app, and it was like everything was set me off. I'll go into other people's streams and they'll be smoking or whatever. And so I'm like, I just can't go into their stream. And one time I went into this one stream, and they were doing like a marijuana session or whatever, and I was earning money on this app. So I'm like, if I do this, I can get money, because I was short on rent too. I'm like, why not? You know, I can just smoke this one time for this one event, and I'll be fine. I'll just stop smoking again. So I smoked for that one event. And then from then on, I just kept smoking anyways. Like, even afterwards, I went back to smoking marijuana. And smoking. As a matter of fact, it increased. I remember the Bible saying one demon, you clean your house. And then once you clean your house, you start back doing what you used to do, and then 7 other come in. That's what I felt happened. Because then I just started smoking more and more, like to the point where I was doing an ounce a week. I stopped paying rent. Like, I'll give give my landlord what I felt I could give him at the time, which wasn't much. And even through this, I have a God-fearing landlord. And I realized this because even throughout this, he was giving me chance after chance after chance. Like, I would tell him, like, yeah, I could give you this much, or I'll pay you this much at this time. And he'll be like, believe me or whatever. And it got to the point where I was on the brink of being evicted because I wasn't working or anything. I'm spending most of my money on weed. I'm giving them what I want to give to the landlord. And then eventually, like, I remember I remember getting like an eviction notice and a court order and everything else. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. And mind you, I just moved into this apartment building last year. I'm like, I'm already about to be evicted. And then I started thinking about my kids. I'm like, man, they're about to hate me. We're about to have to go move with grandma again, you know. It's nothing I can do about it. I just remember feeling hopeless again. And then I started falling back into depression and everything. And I remember thinking, like, I really need to stop smoking. So at this point in time, I remember thinking, God, I want to stop smoking. This time I went to him. And I remember praying. I'm like, God, take this away from me. Take this away. I don't want to do this anymore. Make it just like make me sick or something. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember saying, make it smell like caca, make it smell like doo-doo. Like, that's the only way I'll be able to stop. Like, just make it smell less appealing. And after I prayed that, I remember I still was smoking. I still went to like the dispensary the next day. I remember going to the dispensary, grabbing some weed or whatever, coming back home, and I'm sitting down and I'm rolling it or whatever. I light it up, and all of a sudden I hear, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I'm looking. I'm like, "Oh shoot! Like, what's that talking to me?" And I'm like, I didn't say nothing. I'm like smoking, and once again I heard, "What are you doing? I thought you said you were gonna stop. Like, you asked me to help you to stop. What are you doing?" So I remember putting it out, and I felt so convicted. I had never felt convicted of smoking in my entire life. Even when I tried to stop, I've never felt the conviction of, like, this is bad, this is wrong. Until I heard God's voice, like, what are you, like, how are you gonna ask me to stop, and then you go and you get it, and then you start again? And I remember him saying, like, put it out. I put it out. He's like, now throw everything away. I'm like, everything's like, everything, throw everything away right now. Like, don't wait to do it. Throw it away right now. So I remember grabbing the trash bag, and I threw all my paraphernalia away, threw all my weed away, and I just prayed. And after that, and this was August the 16th of this year. I remember this was when this all happened, August the 16th. And then he's like, because even before that, like, even after the deliverance videos, I was still watching Pastor Lorenzo and everything, and I was still smoking. It was like the things just don't mesh. Trying to live in the world and yet trying to be saved at the same time. It just wasn't meshing. And at that moment I knew, like it's time. Like, I feel like if I didn't give my life over, if I didn't stop doing it right then and there when the Holy Spirit said, no, stop, what are you doing? I think I would have, some way, somehow, I would have died in my sin. I don't know how, but I would have, because I already have high blood pressure, you know. I could have had a heart attack or something. Something could have happened, you know. And I was vaping. I was vaping and smoking. So all of that was bad for me. And then after he told me to stop, I stopped. I threw everything away. And then it's funny because now, after that happened, now every time I smell someone smoking, because I live in a neighborhood where everybody smokes. my whole apartment building, and it's like everyone smokes weed. I walk out my door and I can't help but to smell it. But guess what it smells like now? It smells like doo doo. Yeah, it smells like cock. Yeah. And that's so funny. Sometimes I laugh about it. I'm like, okay, thank you guys. I see what you did there. So it smells so bad to me now, to the point where I'll be walking out and just like, ooh, this stinks. Like, ew. Even then, I still smell it. And sometimes when I'm going through hard time or whatever, I'll smell it and I crave it still, but at the same time, I'll know. Now it's different. It feels different because now it's like the relationship that I have with God. Now I feel like He saved me from it. Why would I want to go back to that?
Yeah, exactly.
Why would I want to? Like, right. Like, why would I want to go back to that? Now I feel more convicted. Even if I think of it, I apologize. I say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be thinking this way. Like, Lord, give me strength to continue. As a matter of fact, I wrote a scripture on a piece of paper. I can't remember which one, but it was saying something about temptation. Like, no temptation is I can't remember. I think I highlighted it somewhere. But it was about temptation, and no temptation is unknown for God, unknown to man or whatever. But He always gives us a way out, no matter what, as long as we just lean on Him. Timothy, help. Trying to figure out where it is.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Right, I can't think of, but I've still got it. It's like written down. I think it's. Hold on, let me get my Bible. Okay, it's 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. So I wrote that down and I just stuck it on a sticky note, and it's on my bedside table. And every time I will feel tempted or whatever, I will read that scripture. And I haven't been as tempted. Like every now and then, like I said, it's not often, but I'll smell it. I'll be like, or I'll be going through a hard day. And I'll be like, man, but I'll know like not to do it because He brought me out of that. And every time He will give me a way out. But that's not but that doesn't mean go back to it and then think to myself, oh well, shoot, He'll give me a way out, He'll help me stop again. No. Like once I stopped, I'm like, I don't want to go back at all. Period. Like He saved me from it this time. I don't want to disappoint Him at all because He's always been faithful to me. So why wouldn't I be faithful to Him? And I remember a week after I quit and threw everything away. My son's 20. At this time, he was 20. He works at a car wash. I remember I was in my room watching something on TV and braiding my daughter's hair. He comes in, he's like, Mom, don't be mad at me. I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, this guy that I work with, he just gave me this. And he reaches in his pocket and he's got a handful of weed. And he's like, I thought you would want this. I'm like, no, I don't want it because I stopped, but I took it anyways and I set it on my table. And I smell it, like the smell of it, I just started getting tempted. Like, I still probably got a paper somewhere. I could just roll up and do it one time. Then I heard the Holy Spirit say, flush it now. Like, why is it sitting on your table? No, flush it now. And it became so persistent. Flush it now, flush it now, flush it now, to the point where I'm like, okay. I stopped what I was doing and I took it off my table and I flushed it immediately. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I felt sad when I did it. Like, I don't know. Like, I knew I felt better, but I felt sad at the same time. Like, my flesh was sad, but my spirit was like celebrating, like, yes, you did it. You're good. So I was, and after that, I haven't really came across any of it. I had a dream shortly after that, where in my dream, I was sleeping, I was laying down, then I had woke up and there was some weed under my pillow. And in my dream, it's like someone's telling me, like, you might as well smoke it. I couldn't see the person that was saying, you might as well roll up, smoke it. You know? And then I'm like, no, why is this under my pillow? I do not smoke weed because I love God. Like, I'm not about to do, like, and I was so angry and I yelled it. I'm like, I love God. I'm not about to do this. Who put this under my pillow? And I woke up afterwards. And yeah, I didn't have any more dreams. Every now and then I'll still have a dream. But it wouldn't be me smoking weed. It would be someone that I know smoking. But I don't have those dreams as often. Every time I have a dream like that, I'll wake up and I'll rebuke it. And I'll pray, like, Lord, forgive me for having that dream. Like, I don't know what it means. I don't know why I keep having it. I feel like it's the enemy trying to, put that temptation back into me. But it's like, it's different this time around. Like, I don't want to do it because I know God doesn't want me to do it. He saved me from it. He saved me. And after I had quit, I haven't been depressed. I'm more at peace with everything. Like, I've got a new job. I'm able to pay my rent. When I went to court for my eviction, I owed a lot of money. When I went to court for my eviction, I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I'm about to leave. I gotta go stay with my mom or whatever. But I said, I've got a saved landlord, because he called me like the day after my court, and he's like, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, I don't know what to do because I just started a new job. I know you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear about me having to owe you money or when I'm going to have the money. He's like, no, but I also know that you're a human being that I don't want out on the street. So he's like, let me work out a plan with you at least. Like, I'm not trying to kick you out. That's not something I want to do. So came up with a payment plan, and I'm still here. Despite it all. Like, that was God. Like, this, it's nothing but God. Like, after I stopped smoking, it's like, now let me show you what I can do. That's what he's telling me. Like, now let me show you. Because once again, I could have been put out. I've been owing so much money for the longest time. But God is like so faithful and getting me through it. He blessed me with a job and everything. The landlord had gave me a certain amount of time to, like, after we discussed the payment plan, to come up with the money. And I'm like, I'm not going to have the money, like all of the money at this point in time. Then I remember my sister calling me like, hey, like, and mind you, my sister's not working right now. She had quit her job because she started feeling like it was time for her to leave. So she quit her job. She's relying on her 401k. She calls me. She's like, hey, God just put it on my heart to give you some money. And she was like, I remember she's like, I don't have it. But she's like, I don't really have it. But once I told God I don't really have it, he told me, I got you. Like, don't worry about it. So she's like, I'm about to send you this money. How much do you need? And I just remember, because once again, I wrote a scripture down and I prayed about it. About do not be anxious about anything, but lean on God. So I remember writing that scripture down, and I remember after court, I remember praying it. Like, I wrote it down and I just waved it in the air to God, and I'm like, God, you said, like, this is in your word. You said, so I'm having faith in you. I'm trusting in you. And then it just got closer and closer and closer to the date where I was supposed to have that money. And then the day before I was supposed to turn that money in, she called me and she was like, God put it on my heart to give you this money. I just remember breaking down and just crying. Like seriously, like, I remember saying, no, you've helped me so much in the past and you're not working right now. She's like, I know, but God is still telling me to give it to you. So, and mind you, my sister, she believes in God, but she doesn't really go to church or anything because, me and her, we've got church hurt from people in church. Sometimes can be wicked people, so that kind of like led her away from church, but she's like, she still believes in God. But she's still kind of worldly. So we're still praying for her. But she told me that, and I'm like, that's nothing but God. Like, I remember thinking that, like, that's nothing but God. And then after that happened, I was participating in a program before I got this job. And the program that my sister told me about, the same sister that loaned me the money, I remember, like, I had to it was a long process that I had to go through or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not even going to have any type of money until like next month, So I was like worrying, like, how am I going to pay the rest of this money for rent? I got a check in the mail from the program. And I'm like, but I wasn't even supposed to get this check yet. I'm like not expecting this check until like next month. And then I was thinking that it wouldn't be until I even completed the class, but they sent me the check. It was for like $600. So I'm like, what the heck? And then after that, I got a check from a job that I used to work at earlier this year for like $111. I'm like, where is all this money coming from? Because I thought that I was done. I thought I had gotten my last check and I was done from that job. So that money came, the money from the program came, and then a week later, another check from the program came. And I'm like, it's nothing but God. After I like turned my life back around and I rededicated myself back to Him, like everything just started falling into place. Everything. I'm not angry. I'm not depressed. I have the financial means to pay rent and everything. I'm happy to pay rent. I'm happy that I still have a roof over my head, food to eat. God provides every time. Like, I don't have to worry. And if I do feel myself worrying, I pray about it. And then He makes a way happen. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not depressed. I don't cuss. Mind you, prior to stopping weed and giving my life back over, I cursed like a sailor. I would make a sailor blush. My mouth was so foul. Like every 5 seconds was a curse word coming out of my mouth. But since I've been saved again, it's like the day after I stopped completely cursing. Like that shocks me. Timothy, if you would have heard my mouth. Even my sister was like, you've changed so much. She's like, now I'm scared to curse around because I'm scared you may judge me. And I'm like, I'm not even about to be like that. It may shock me. I may be like clutching my pearls or whatever, like, oh my. But I'm not going to be like, you're going to hell. So yeah, since then it's just I've changed and I feel the change. Like, and I've got so much peace, like so much, and I'm so much happier now. And I don't know, it just feels so different. I don't curse. I'm not angry. Even if I curse in my head or if a swear word even slips, I'm immediately apologizing to God. Like, oh, immediately repenting. If I feel like I've done anything wrong, I am repenting. Like, because I do not want to do anything to go against Him. I don't want to grieve the Holy Spirit at all. Like, if I feel like I am, I repent immediately, like that. I immediately apologize. It's like I've never cursed around my mom. If I were to curse, I would apologize. That's how I feel about God. And I was like, no, I can't do it anymore. Like if I have a bad thought about someone, if I have a bad thought about someone, I immediately repent. He's still working on me about that. Because sometimes the thought will still come to my mind. He's still working on me about that, but I immediately feel bad. Immediately. And another example of that, when I got this laptop, like it was delivered to me. It was a problem with the delivery. I went to a place, to an access point, and the guy that owned the place where it was going to, he made a mistake, sent it back on the truck, and I excused him of I was upset. I was angry. I accused him of trying to steal it and sell it to somebody else or whatever. Like, and it was because that day, like little things just were like happening and building up. My daughter was messing up in school, and then that happened, and then something else happened. So it was like everything was happening on that day. And I took it out on that man. And immediately after I hung up the phone with him, I felt convicted. I immediately repented. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I forgive this man for making the mistake. Like I just repented, I forgave. And then like later on that day, he called while I was at work though, so I couldn't answer. So he called, left a voicemail. I went to go and get my package the next day, and I immediately, like, I apologized to him. Like, I'm like, I'm sorry, I was going through a lot. And it was like, I've never really apologized to people in my life. After I blow up at them, I've always felt like I had a reason to blow up at them. But now it's different because I feel convicted after doing it. And now I will apologize to the person. If I'm able to, I'll apologize. And when I was apologizing to the man, he's like, it's fine. It's okay. And I'm like, no, but I need to do this. Because I feel wrong that I blew up at you. And I explained to him, I'm like, I was just going through a lot. He's like, okay, I accept your apology. Thank you. Well, yeah. But basically, throughout my life, God has had his hands on me. Like he's protected me. Um, I remember praying against rejection, and then he showed me all the times where I was rejected and all the times that he saved me from situations. And it's like, he's always been here. And now since I turned my life back around, he's just showing out. So many things he's just showing out, from keeping me from losing my house to finding a job where I can help and be a blessing to other people, because now I'm working with kids that need help because they're going through situations, and he's blessed me to be able to help them. um, and I'm actually happy where I'm at in life now. I have a peace that surpasses all understanding. I just feel a peace And when I feel like someone's trying to take my peace, or I feel angry, or I begin to feel my flesh rise up, I know I can go to him and I can just pray about it, and he will help me. And he's here for me. And now I'm going to be baptized again. I have to arrange it with my pastor. I've got to call him because right now I'm unable to. I'm not going to say I can't. For some reason, I have a blockage where I even though I try, I'm unable to fully speak in tongues. But I feel like I need to. I know that is like the prayer language of angels. So I'm like, I really want to speak in tongues. I feel that there's a blockage. I don't know what's going on, but I prayed. And it's like, I'm like, maybe, and I asked God, I'm like, should I be baptized again? And he didn't give me that answer immediately. He never gives us an answer when we expect it. Well, it's rare that he gives us the answer when we expect the answer. But like a week later, I remember talking to my friend Rhonda, and God put her back into my life. This is a woman that's filled with God, that going with church, she prophesies everything. But me and her lost contact, you know. And now we're back because I was in the world. I'm doing a lot of things that she doesn't do. But now we're back in touch with each other. And she was telling me her testimony of everything she went through. And she had fell to her flesh too. Meeting a man, and she is a long story with her as well. But now she turned her life back to Christ, and me and her were just talking to each other and fellowshipping with each other about how good it feels to turn our lives back around, and our testimonies and everything else. And I was telling her, I'm like, I'm not sure. Like I was baptized when I was 16. You know, I felt like I knew the meaning of it and everything else like that. But it was like immediately after I got baptized, that's when I fell away from God. And I went through all of these things. And I'm like, even though I know I still believe in God, even throughout all of that I went through, I still believed in him. I was still living in the world. I was still fleshlight, but I believed. And I was saved. But I feel like, I think after I get baptized again, that may unlock me a little more. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And I remember praying that to God, like, do I need to get baptized again? Like, I was just asking the question. Like, I'm looking up in heaven. I'm like, do I need to be baptized? He didn't give me that answer at that moment. But as I was talking and fellowshipping with my friend Rhonda, and she was saying, maybe I should get baptized. I asked her, I'm like, and I'm not sure if I should get baptized again, because I got baptized when I was 16. But I feel like now that I understand, now that he's really like came to me and is like saving me and like left and right, he's like opening my eyes more and more. And like I'm getting more into the word and everything. And I'm listening to Brother Timothy read the Bible, and you've gotten me more into reading my Bible. Like even after the Bible readings, I'll go and I'll look in and I'll read the Bible myself as well. And I'm thankful that God sent you my way as well. I'm so thankful for the school app and everything else, because I feel like everyone and everything was placed into my life at this moment, because God feels like, okay, now you're ready to receive me fully. And when I was telling her about it, she's like, it's like she said, yeah, you should get baptized again, because now you understand more. Now you're really fully turning your life around to Christ. And I was like, and I stopped and I thought about it, because mind you, this is a week later. And I'm like, wow. She's like, what? I'm like, I asked God last week if I should be baptized again. And this is my confirmation. And she was like, oh, wow. And then I just kind of started crying, and I'm like thanking him. I'm like, thank you, Jesus, because I wasn't sure, but now that was my confirmation. He gave me confirmation through that conversation with her. Like, yeah, you need to be baptized again. So I am. Um, so that's my testimony.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
God really does work in mysterious ways, especially when it comes to everything. And like, I know when I started doing this, I had no idea what was going to happen, but I'm just like, well, I'm just going to, let the Spirit lead me. And I'm glad, like, it's reached out and touched you. It's helped you. It's helped many others. Even when I first started going to church when I was in Illinois, it got many there that were already in church to get into their Bible that much more. And it lit a fire under other people. And I'm like, I don't know what God's doing or anything, but I'm not here to question that. It's like I'm just here to do what He says. And listening to your testimony is beautiful. Like I can sympathize with so much. Growing up and going through so much and everything. We each have our own differences, but similarities at the same time. And then finding God and the way God finds us and pulls us aside and is like, yo, like I'm gonna set you on the path. It's like it's up to you to stay on this path.
right, right.
So and
Yes. And now I'm in my Bible more. And not only am I reading my Bible more, now I am understanding. Like, I never really read it and understood before. Like, I would read it, it would be kind of like, I hate to say it, but it would bore me, and I would stop reading it. But now, like, I'll read it now, and I'll be like getting revelations left and right. I'm like, oh wow. And it's like I can appreciate it so much more because it's like relatable. We like fall so many times. Even after we fall, He's still there when we're ready, when we're ready to turn back and say, oh God, I need you. I'm sorry. Like, He's still there, and He'll still take us back, even through it all, even no matter how hard we mess up, because I messed up a lot. I've messed up a lot. And even then, like, His grace and His mercies kept me through this. Like, I could have died so many times, and still He's there waiting. Like, He waited for me, like, this whole time. And it's so beautiful. Like, the story of Moses and how Israel, like, even after God took them out, and they were just like still sinning, like, still each time they sin and God was angry, He's like, no, y'all not supposed to be doing this. And then He would send plagues and everything else, but all it took is them to turn back around and say, I'm sorry, and to pray and repent. And He'll be like, okay, take us back. That's beautiful.
Oh, like, absolutely. God is extremely forgiving. He really is. He wants our love, and He wants us to follow Him faithfully and not complain about it. Like, it's not going to be easy at times, It's definitely going to be stressful at times, and it's going to go against a lot of the people that we consider friends or family. Like, they're just like, why are you doing this? Like, you should be doing this over here. And it's just, they're clearly speaking in their flesh, and so in love with the world that they can't understand why we do the things that we do until it will finally happen to them. And all we can do is pray for them and talk to them and plant those seeds. So now it's like, you've seen everyone. This is Crystal's testimony here. It's a powerful testimony in itself. And it's like, I hope this helps touch others that have either gone through or are going through the same things that she's gone through. And just know that there's hope. There's always hope. God's always there. He's just waiting for that opportunity to snag you off of that track you're on and put you on His track. And it happens.
It does. It does.
But I appreciate you spending the time here with me and sharing your testimony with me today, and with those that are listening to us and everything like that. So And hopefully this inspires others that want to share their testimony to come and share it as well.
Yes. And I thank you for allowing me to share my testimony.
No,
It's
absolutely.
been relieving.
Good.
I feel better.
Good. I mean, that's what it's there for. We're not meant to hold on to it. We're meant to share it with the world because it's, like I said, it's meant to be that piece of light in the dark for those that are going through the same thing and looking for that way out. And I know God put it on my heart to share mine, and I'm glad it's gotten to where you want to share yours, and there's so many others that have been reaching out to me wanting to share theirs too. So this is just the start of many.
Yes, I can't wait.
Oh yeah,
I thank you.
absolutely. I thank God for
And I
bringing
thank
everyone
God.
into
Yes.
our lives. You know, bringing all of us together and just pushing us along and doing the things that He's done for us to make sure that we're doing what we need to do in order to live right. Like, people can argue with us all day long about, like, oh, well, you know, God shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. And it's like, I'm not putting God in a box. And I'm thankful that He does the things He does. And it's like, you can use your carnal mind and think all you want about certain things, or say that you won't follow someone because, you know, you don't like the way he does certain things. But when He touches your life to such a degree and turns you around from such things that you could never break free from at all, like, it changes you permanently, and you
Yeah.
don't look at things the same way anymore.
Not
So
at all. After this last time, after he delivered me from
yeah.
everything, it's like I'm like he loves me so much.
Oh,
That's what I think
absolutely.
about all the time. Every time I think like this is hard, I think he loves me so much and he's so faithful. Like he gave his son. He laid down his life and everything for me. So who am I to say what's hard, what's difficult? You know?
Exactly. It's like, I know it's like being a follower of the way and a Christian is never meant to be comfortable. It's never meant to never meant to be easy. It's going to be difficult. It's going to have snares. It's going to have consequences. We're going to lose people in our lives, unfortunately, but that's part of it, because there's one of those things, along with some of the Bible scriptures you were reading. It's, we can't share a table with both God and the devil. It's we can't eat from both tables, you know. And there's people that they try to, and it's unfortunate. Like the parable I'm going to be dropping later today is probably going to speak a lot on to a lot of other people about stuff like that, and it's about heart posture and how we take in the word and apply it to our lives, stuff like that. And that's exactly what you've been doing here. That's exactly what I've been doing, and so many others that have joined us in this journey. And I hope again, like, this reaches somebody, and I really hope they reach out so that they can share their testimony as well, so that more and more we can open more eyes to people, to many other people that are just trying to find their way, you know, and find God. But I think this will be the end of the video here. I really appreciate your time, and we've been here for almost 2 hours. That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're
That
all
was
right.
long.
You are all right. It's mine probably could have been a lot longer, but I cut out a lot of the fat just to get to the point. But I'm glad you didn't. You had a lot of emotional points in there, that points that I didn't want to hit in mine, because they're a little not good to put on video. But it's besides the point. But yeah, no. I really appreciate it, and I hope you do come to the reading today. It's gonna start here in like a half hour,
Oh yeah.
so I look
Oh
forward to
yeah,
that.
I'll definitely be there.
But,
Definitely be there.
those of you watching and listening, thank you for hanging out this entire time with us. Thank you for taking in Crystal's testimony. And like I said, if you guys want to share yours, make sure to reach out, and we'll all welcome you in with open arms. And allow you to share your story so that the rest of the world can hear it. I love you guys, and God bless you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for listening to their testimony. I know it can be powerful, especially when it hits you deep. If you have your own testimony that you want to give to others, make sure to contact me, and we can schedule a time so we can do a recording and get it ready for anyone that wants to have theirs recorded. God bless you guys, and I love you.